Welcome to the Therapeutic Food Solutions podcast. I'm your host, Marian Mitchell. I'm an integrative nutrition health coach, therapeutic diet expert, and founder of The Road to Living Whole. There are many different diets out there. It's hard to know which one is right for you with your chronic illness and autoimmune disease. In this podcast, I'm going to share with you the foundational pieces every single therapeutic diet out there shares, and also how to use the best one for your particular diagnosis. If you've been looking for a meal planning partner, help navigating the complicated healthcare system, and want to feel better quickly, I'm your girl. Grab your kombucha and notebook. Let's dive in. Back in 2009, I was newly divorced and without good insurance. I couldn't go to the doctor for every little thing. While it was initially scary, I quickly learned how to take care of myself at home. This was empowering and life-changing. With some knowledge and a new arsenal of remedies in my home, I have rarely had to use pharmaceuticals since, and my health has soared. I am thrilled for today's guest, alternative pharmacist Billy Wease, who is going to take us deeper into this very topic. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Would you do me a favor and introduce yourself, give us your background, and then just tell us your story?
Yeah, so when I was 14 years old, I decided that I wanted to be a pharmacist. And I wanted to be a pharmacist because in my mind then, I thought that a pharmacist helped people be well and healthy. And my last semester at pharmacy school, I was at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I got my weekly phone call from my grandmother. And I called her Granny, and it was the typical phone call. Yes, Granny, I'm eating well. Yes, Granny, I'm sleeping well. Yes, Granny, classes are going well. And I said, remember, I'm only a few weeks from graduation, and you promised me you'd make me my favorite meal, your meatloaf. And of course, she agreed to that. And then it was, oh my gosh, you have cancer. And it was a situation where I'm sitting there now saying, Granny, I wish there was something I could do. I wish I could reach out and hug you. But I'm 3 hours away. So tears running down my eyes, and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, how can I help Granny? So I decided that I would drive the 3 hours, pick Granny up, and take her to the oncology appointment. So at the time, my fiance was also in pharmacy school at UNC. So we were both getting ready to graduate from the #1 pharmacy school in America. So my thought process was I could be there for Granny and I would be able to be some help. So Beth and I left Chapel Hill, went to pick her up, went to the oncology appointment. The oncologist said, you know, you have this type of cancer, you need this chemo and you need this radiation, you need it now. And I looked at him, and I'll never forget this as long as I live. I said, what else can we do to help Granny have a better outcome? He looked me right in the eye and he said, absolutely nothing. And so I took Granny back home. Beth and I were driving back to Chapel Hill that evening. And I just looked at her and I said, you know, what are we doing? What are we really doing in pharmacy school? I said, we got into pharmacy because we want to help people get well. And we don't have any answers for Granny. And so it opened my mind to the fact that I wasn't learning anything about health or wellness, that I was learning about drugs and how people should be on drugs forever. And so I went back to school. I finished school. I came home. Granny had started her chemo and radiation. She went from working 40 hours a week to, wheelchair ridden, bedridden, changing her diapers. We had to move in with her and my grandfather because he just couldn't move her around anymore. And shortly after that, she took a really bad turn for the worse. We took her to the hospital. I called the oncologist. He met us at the hospital. And he said, hey, the treatments we did were aggressive and her kidneys and liver are failing. She's got a couple hours. So we called the family. She died later that night, just like he suggested. And leaving that hospital that night, I looked at Beth and I said, I can't do this pharmacy thing like this. And I had just recently taken a job with Eckerd Drug and she's like, well, what are you going to do? I was like, I don't know, but I'm turning my notice in tomorrow. So I turned in my 2-week notice. I had no idea what I was going to do. I just knew that nobody was getting better doing what we were doing. And so I decided to open my own pharmacy. I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, I was young, out of school, dumb, so, but I said, all right, we got to have the right name for this pharmacy, right? We got to think this through. So we ended up settling on Prescriptions Plus. And now there's 3 Prescriptions Plus locations. And the idea was, we offer prescriptions plus we're going to teach you how to be well if that's what you're looking for. So that experience led me to go back to the University of South Florida School of Medicine and get an advanced fellowship in Metabolic and Nutritional Medicine. Now, the reason I think that story is important is because as the author now of the book, The 21st Century Pharmacist, as the guy who has created the OptiYou RX wellness program and the OptiYou RX line of supplements, along with the Prescriptions Plus line of supplements, I learned that none of what I did learn was that nothing I learned in pharmacy school do I use on a daily basis. But I do use the things that I learned in the fellowship in Metabolic and Nutritional Medicine. So I often tell people, I feel like Beth and I should get a refund from Chapel Hill. Like, we paid a lot of money to go to school and we really don't use any of the knowledge. Now, it does allow me to be a licensed pharmacist, and it does allow her to be a licensed pharmacist, which gives us credibility. But it is really sad because I now am a professor at a pharmacy school, just teaching an elective on my wellness program, my OptiYou RX program. And those kids today don't know any different than we knew when we graduated in the 90s from UNC Chapel Hill. It's the same training. It's the very same training. It is just newer drugs. It's just newer drug classes and newer drug names. But they don't learn anything about wellness. They don't learn anything about health. They don't learn anything about nutrition. They don't learn anything about supplements. It's heartbreaking. I mean, it's really sad because I was hoping that when I was asked to come teach this elective that these kids would have a basic understanding of what I was doing, and they don't. And it's really, I literally created the curriculum and with some assumptions, and then had to recreate it because I really had to dumb it down because they just didn't know the basics. And so what it's taught me is this: the education system has not changed, is not going to change. And we have to be the change. We have to be the ones who are educating people. So I do a lot of classes, I do a lot of teaching, and I'm trying to help people understand what the 21st century pharmacist should look like. Is they should understand wellness. They should understand supplements. They should understand nutrients. They should understand drug nutrient depletions. And unfortunately, I would say 99.99% of my colleagues do not. And the really sad part is it's not just pharmacists that don't get this training. It's physicians, it's nurses, it's physician's assistants, it's nurse practitioners. It's all of them. My daughter is getting ready to graduate from physician assistant school right now in August of this year. She's doing her clinical rotations now. And she knows this stuff because she grew up with, learning it in our house. But she knows what they're learning in PA school it's a path for disaster for the patients. More drugs, more side effects, more problems, right? So that's my story. I know that's long. I'm sorry, but it's just, Granny motivates me every day. And this was, a long, long time ago when she passed away and this all happened. But it's still really what motivates me. When I teach a class, one of the first things I do is I put up a picture of Granny standing on the beach and say, this is why I'm doing this. Because there's a lot of people out there who don't have hope. And if I had known then what I know now, I could have made a huge difference in Granny's quality of life. But I unfortunately didn't know it at the time.
What a powerful story. I'm so sorry that happened to Granny. And I feel like that's a story a lot of us can relate to, right? Like we or someone that we love gets a diagnosis of some kind, and the only options are drugs, surgery, and we don't know, right?
Yeah.
When there really is this arsenal of information and modalities and herbal remedies and just all these things that can help the body, help support the body, and help the body, give the body what it needs to heal.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know, the people who listen to this podcast are struggling with autoimmune disease and chronic illness, sometimes multiple, very complex chronic illness. And, you know, a lot of the times by the time they come to me, you know, they've gone through several doctors, and they just know that there's something more that they can do. You know, and like my story was, I lost insurance and I had all these health problems. And, you know, it started with, surprisingly, like one of my doctors saying, hey, you know, stop getting antibiotics for your sinus infections that you've had 5 this year. It's probably fungal. Use a neti pot with oregano oil. And that was like the domino of like, that's how my story, it was like the catalyst of how my story, like I started going, wait, if there's these other things that don't damage my gut, that don't damage my body, that actually help my body heal, like what else is there? So yeah, so let's talk about the person who is in this spot where they know that there's more that they can do, or maybe they're for the first time hearing, whoa, there's other options. You know, where would they begin in your opinion? Where should someone start?
Well, I think that the first thing they need to understand, I think, in my opinion, is how broken our system really is. So they're depending on a system that is actually the third leading cause of death in the United States. So it's called iatrogenic death, which means medical system or doctor induced. And it is, year after year in the research, the third leading cause of death behind heart disease and cancer. Now, so the first step, I think, is they have to understand that they are in a system that is set up for failure. And that doesn't mean that their doctor is a bad person or their pharmacist is a bad person. It means they were trained in a system that fails. And so what they know to teach people to do is often, in my opinion and in my experience, not the right thing to do. And so once they start to realize that there are alternatives, then I think the next thing they need to do is think about, okay, how do I educate myself in order to make the best decision for me and my family? So the number one thing that I teach people is you have to be the CEO of your own health. Nobody cares more. At every class, I say, write this down. Write these 3 things down. Number one, be the CEO of your own health. If you're in a system that's the third leading cause of death, and that's all you're dependent on, you're probably not going to get real good results. And when they realize that within that system, the average prescription drug has 398 side effects. I have this documented study in my book, The 21st Century Pharmacist. This is University of Stanford School of Medicine. The average drug has 398 side effects. When we combine more than one drug, I always say, hey, if your kids know who Buzz Lightyear is, to infinity and beyond, that's how many side effects we have. We don't know how many side effects there are when there's more than one drug involved. And when I see these people, much like you, they've typically been to doctors for decades. They're getting worse and worse. They're not getting better. And they have to come to the point where they go, okay, this is a broken system. I have to educate myself. I have to be the CEO of my own health. I can't depend on my doctor, my pharmacist, my nurse, my wife, my husband, my kids. And I need to get to an expert. I need to get to somebody who really understands health. Because one of the things that I'm afraid that I see a lot of is I will have so many people come to me and they're doing something because they talk to somebody, a friend, a friend's friend, a family member told them to do it, or they watched some video on YouTube and, the guy or the girl looked healthy. And so they start taking advice from these people. And so I tell people, anybody can say anything on YouTube or Facebook or wherever. It doesn't mean it's wrong. It just doesn't mean that it's right. So my entire life and career has been built on wellness and health and learning this stuff and constantly studying and constantly coming on shows like yours and trying to help people understand. And over the past 3 decades, 31, 32 years now, we've literally helped tens of thousands of people get off their meds. So I think the first thing is to accept that the system they're in is probably not the right answer. And number two is they have to educate themselves. They have to be the CEO. They have to start learning from somebody who's knowledgeable and who has done this and understands this. So hopefully that answers your question. But I think that's where they have to start, is knowing how bad if they really understood how bad our system is. For example, over 106,000 people die every single year from properly prescribed prescription drugs. Not a mistake on the doctor's part, the pharmacist's part, the nurse's part. 106,000 people die year after year after year, and nobody says anything about it, right? You don't hear that on the news. You don't hear that. I mean, if a plane crashes, God forbid, 300-400 people die, it's all we talk about for a month, right? But if 106,000 people die year after year, or the third leading cause of death is the medical system, the doctors, nobody even talks about it, right? People don't even know what iatrogenic death is, much less that it's the third leading cause of death. So we got to understand how bad it is. And I think this latest virus debacle has hopefully opened more people's eyes, especially people who are listening to a great podcaster like you. Hopefully more and more people are seeing, hey, they probably don't have the right answers for me.
Definitely. And that's, part of my story was just being empowered to be like, wow, I do have control of my health. And,
Yes.
there are all these things that actually do help.
Yep.
And I just, spent hours upon hours for years just studying different herbs and different berries and different, nutrients and things like that, and what their medicinal properties are and the therapeutic doses and the uses. And it's a lot of information. And I love that you have a book that can help people get started. I'll be sure to link that in the show notes. So obviously there's amazing resources like you and your products and all of that. It's also overwhelming, right?
Yes.
Like I have this whole, I have protocols for when a sinus infection starts, or when we start getting the sniffles, or there's a fever onset, or a stomach bug hits. I have all these categories of remedies at home that I know shorten the duration, support the immune system, all this stuff. But getting to that point, and then also adding complex illness on top of that, and being scared of something making it worse because you hear good things and bad things, and the doctor saying it doesn't work, or it's going to hurt you, or, and then people say, no, it's a magic bullet. There's a lot of information out there. So for someone who's hearing this and are excited, they're like, oh my gosh, there's actually light at the end of the tunnel. And then they go on the internet and they're like, oh my gosh, I don't even know where to begin. Where do you think that they can start outside of your book and stuff? If somebody were to just be like, I want to learn more, I want to get this knowledge, what's maybe the right mindset, maybe a few more resources and things that they can do to just start learning?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll tell you, I don't think being healthy is complicated. Okay. I really don't. I think that it's easy to be healthy. And what I've tried to do is I've broken down my OptiYou RX program into 5 pillars of health. God-given quality foods, the world's best nutritional supplements, water from a medical device, science-based exercise, and I've kind of gotten away from even saying the word exercise, and movement, and rest and recovery sleep. I don't think it's any more difficult than that. And I love what you said, you have protocols for these different things that come along, but I have a different philosophy. I have a daily protocol where I don't think I can get those things to come along. So I do have a protocol if somebody has it, but the way that my family and I have approached it is, let's don't ever get a sinus infection. Let's don't ever have a fever. Let's don't ever, you know what I mean? And I'm not saying that we never can or do, but it's very, very rare.
I'm going to interrupt you because it's the same in my house. It's very, very rare.
Yes.
You know, I was a very sickly child. I had very severe asthma. And every time I got a cold, it would turn into a sinus infection and go straight to my lungs. And I'd be on inhalers and breathing treatments and humidifiers and Vicks and, you know, all these things. And when I started owning my health and being empowered, I had to use more remedies. But what I found was that I got sick less often. I got sick less severely. And I have young kids, so they get everything, right? And then they sneeze in, like my daughter got a stomach bug. She threw up, came in my bed. And then about 12 hours later, my stomach was sour. I didn't get it as severely as her, but I also knew what to do to make sure I supported my health, right? So it's like, it went from being several times a year to like, I might get really, really sick of every few years, right? Like most of the time, like, so I understand what you're saying with the whole, like, live in a way that you don't need it in the first place.
Exactly.
And then if it does happen, you know, that's when those remedies really come in. You don't want to depend on them for health. They're a facet, you know, the 5 pillars, they're a pillar of it, and it's 1/5 of it. So the rest of it is going to make that 1/5 very rarely necessary. So it's almost like an add-on. Maybe it's not even like quite a pillar. It's just kind of like a little like off to the, like, if you think about a plate, I think about like the fat on the side or the drink of water on the side, you know, like this is the core. And then this is the additional piece.
Absolutely.
When you need it.
Yeah. I just wanted to kind of get across to the point that I want to be at a place where I tell everybody, I think my immune system is like a rock.
Yeah.
During this viral debacle, I don't know if we can say the word without
I don't know either. So we'll just use viral debacle. I like it.
I never put on a mask. We never changed any routines at our pharmacy. We never changed our supplement regimen. I didn't wash my hands any more than I ever have. I did thousands of positive viral tests. I never had any sign or symptom of any virus being in my body. Neither did any of my family. And we just never changed it because it's the lifestyle that we live every day. I would certainly never give anybody a shot to try to prevent it. That actually makes it worse. So to answer your question, though, I think that they need to understand that it's not that difficult. And the best way that I help people is I have a monthly subscription where it's called, you know, Be the CEO of Your Own Health. And I do a weekly video, and then once a month on different topics of health, obviously. Then once a month, I do a live Zoom where they can ask questions back and forth. I do a talk on whatever the subject is, and then any questions that they want to ask about health and wellness are there. So that's one way. And then you talked about how sometimes their doctors will tell them, oh, it doesn't work, it'll harm you, it'll do this, that, or the other. Well, remember, these are the people that are giving you drugs that have an average of 398 side effects. That's the first thing. The second thing is I tell everybody nothing that I would ever recommend ever has any downside other than cost. When you take my foundational 4 supplements, anybody from birth to death, there's no side effects. There is 0 side effects. There's only maximum benefit. And as a pharmacist, I understand drug nutrient depletions. I understand drug interactions. I understand drug nutrient interactions. I understand drug herbal interactions. So again, I feel like I am the health expert, and understand what's going on when people are on multiple drugs, and understand how to help them navigate what is and isn't harmful. So it's not, again, it's not real difficult, but I don't think we can just look at the guy with his shirt off on YouTube or the girl in the bikini on YouTube and go, yeah, they know about health because they look good, right? We got to understand, to have somebody with knowledge. You said you studied and studied and studied, and I've studied and studied and studied, and I learned something new about health every single day. I tell people, I don't do anything without trying to learn something new to help. And somebody will come to me for a consultation and a wellness consult, and I'm like, man, I've never been asked that before. So now I got to start diving into that process, right?
Yeah.
And learn what caused that, and how can your body, how can our God-given bodies fix it when we take away the bad stuff and give it what it needs. And I don't think that I don't mean to say that it's that simple, but in 99% of the cases, we can have people feeling better within just a few days. I mean, I hear it. People will call me and go, man, I had no idea I could have that much energy. I just started your multi and your magnesium. It's unreal. They don't understand how nutritionally deficient as a society we really are, and how easy it is to use a simple foundational 4 supplements and go, whoa, my hair grows better. My stomach issues are gone. Whatever it is, my energy's through the roof. I can sleep without an Ambien now. All these kind of things the body is designed to be healthy. I think God designed us to be healthy, and the body can repair and recover when we give it what it needs.
Absolutely. I have the exact same approach. I really focus on the nutrition side of things, but I believe in every facet of health, especially, we don't like to call it alternative medicine, but these God-given remedies,
Yes.
in the plants and in the world that, we have, and just how healing they can be. Your story about magnesium specifically, I have a friend who was like suffering from seizures, really fatigued. I shared something about magnesium and she was like, hey, send me a couple brands to research. Cause I never like to give people just like, here, take this. Like, here's a few
Right.
that I like, research it, see what is a good fit for you. She picked one, she took it, and it was like 2 days later. She's like, I've been sleeping better than I've ever slept in my life. I'm not dealing with muscle pain. My joints are better. And she was just so depleted. Those seizure medications deplete a lot.
Yeah.
And she already, eats pretty clean and all this stuff. So it was like that extra facet, right?
Yeah.
And how powerful and simple it really can be. It feels overwhelming because you think about 5 pillars and all the things that those encompass is a bit overwhelming. And I feel like the supplements and things, especially addressing nutritional deficiencies, help all of them.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no question. And it's you talk about the magnesium, and I love to talk about magnesium because I formulated a 5 organic chelated salt magnesium that is my #1 seller by far. 350 positive functions in the body. 80% of American adults are deficient in magnesium. You can't produce energy efficient without magnesium. Your heart can't work efficient without magnesium. Your muscles won't work right. It's just tragic that almost every prescription and over-the-counter drug depletes magnesium, and nobody talks about it to these people. The pharmacists aren't taught it. The doctors don't know it. And it's a tragedy. And and here's the other thing that is really concerning to me, is that 80% of the supplements on the market don't contain any of the active ingredients. 8 out of 10 that say magnesium don't have any magnesium.
Yeah.
And then the study goes on to say that over 90% of supplements actually contain toxins. So that's why I formulate my own supplements, because I choose each and every ingredient. I choose the active form. I choose the amount that the studies say work. And it just, people know it immediately, like you said, when they use the right stuff. So we meet standards that NSF International certified, current good manufacturing practices, pharmaceutical grade. I mean, There's very few companies in the world that do it. And when people take the right nutrients in, their body it'll just start to turn around. And the body will say, man, I like what you're doing for me. I can now do more things. I can be more efficient. It's crazy what we see with some really, again, simple foundational four. I think they're the four most important things that everybody should be using, which is why I call them the foundational four, right?
Let's dive into that. Give people a place to start. The foundational four. Let's dive into each one of those and why it would be so powerful to address and take in
Sure.
the most bioavailable form. Like let's really give people a place to start and understand why these four are so essential and how they can really help their body heal from the disease state that it's probably in.
Sure. So, these four are based off research and 30 years of experience of what are people the most deficient in, what gives them the most bang for their buck. So, the first thing that I talk about is a multivitamin and mineral formula. Just because we want to cover the overall basics of what the body needs on a daily basis, right? And I have people all the time say, well, I eat really healthy food. Well, you have to understand, food today does not contain the same nutrients that it did 20, 30, 50, 70, 100 years ago. We have depleted soils, right? Most Americans are on a prescription drug or an over-the-counter drug daily, so now they're depleting minerals from that.
Well, then we have to think about also what's in our water and all the
Absolutely.
pharmaceuticals that are in our water. So we might not be taking any pharmaceuticals, but we're still ingesting them and still getting the harmful effects of
That's
those.
absolutely right. And the other drugs that we're taking that people don't realize is if they're eating any conventionally grown meats or eggs, they contain antibiotics and they contain hormones. So yeah, you're right. And it's all in water too. So we're covering the basics. So with the multivitamin and mineral formula, we're really helping people try to produce energy more efficiently. We're trying to prevent one vitamin or mineral being completely out of whack with the other. It's not big amounts of any of these things, but it's amounts that make a difference. They're therapeutic amounts in this formula, and they're all the active forms. So the most common things we hear from people with that supplement is more energy, my hair grows better, my nails grow again, they're not as brittle, those kind of things. So we're covering just an overall basis of good nutrients there. The second of the four is the magnesium. The 5 organic chelated salt magnesium, like I said, 350 positive functions in the body. Anybody suffering from, and especially after some of these shots that people have been taking, from heart arrhythmias, irregular heartbeats, lack of energy, muscle cramps, migraines, lack of sleep, poor quality sleep, seizures. You mentioned seizures, Parkinson's. I mean, there's so many things that are tied back to low magnesium levels.
PMS, PMDD, that too.
PMS is a big one that I deal a ton with as a compounding pharmacist. So yes, absolutely. And by the way, you know what PMS stands for, right?
Premenstrual syndrome.
Yeah, well, that's the medical term, but for guys, it's pretty mean sister, right? So you got
Right.
to get this stuff right. So, no, I'm just kidding, ladies. But yeah, PMS is a big one that magnesium helps with. So the magnesium, I tell everybody, if I was on Gilligan's Island and I could only take one supplement with me, it's going to be the 5 organic chelated salt magnesium. I would love to have all four, but if I could only have one, that's my choice. Then the third one is a probiotic. So it's a probiotic and prebiotic combination that contains the 7 most studied and efficient at giving us the most benefit probiotics with the 3 most efficient prebiotics. So think food to help my good bacteria probiotics grow. And then the fourth one is a digestive enzyme because we need to digest our foods properly. Now, the reason that 3 and 4 are all about the gut is because 70 to 80% of the immune system's in the gut. All autoimmune, which I know you mentioned, all autoimmune disease, 100% starts in the gut. The serotonin for the depression is made in the gut. So when somebody goes to the doctor and they say they have an autoimmune disease, or they come to me for a consultation after none of the Humira drugs and they get prednisones and things work, I tell them, we got to fix your gut first, right? We have to fix your gut because, again, in these conventionally fed things, in the water you're talking about, we're getting hormones and antibiotics and traces of pharmaceutical drugs that are destroying our gut. Every time we take an antibiotic, anytime we take an antibiotic, at any age, at any stage in life, we permanently change the good gut flora. Permanently. There's no going back. We permanently change the good gut flora. So the digestive enzymes and the probiotics are critical. I've helped, I can't tell you how many hundreds, if not thousands, of people with IBS, Crohn's, colitis, ulcerative colitis, all these different gut issues, they just go away when these people start putting the right things in and take the wrong things out. So those 4 are just, they're critical, I think, for health, and things that me and my family don't ever miss. And I'll tell you that my children are now, let's see, Garrett's 27, Olivia's 25, and Ethan is 22. None of my kids have ever had an antibiotic in their life because we've used these things from day one. When they were born, Beth put probiotics and enzymes right on her breast when they're nursing. It starts to build their immune system from day one, right? So these things work, and they're well documented, they're well studied. The sad part is, though, 99.9% of the probiotics on the market are completely worthless. They're dead bacteria, and the studies prove that. And people think they can get it from yogurt, and it's just, there's so many misconceptions, which is why, again, I do my CEO subscription program, is I want people to be educated on a weekly basis so that they can avoid spending money on things that don't work. It's really sad. People come to me and go, well, I tried a multi and I didn't notice any difference. Well, of course, show me your multi. And when I start pointing out to them, this is a toxic form of this is a toxic ingredient, it's got this color in it that can create, bladder cancer. And I have all these things documented in my book, 21st Century Pharmacist, but there is so many toxins in the average supplement. It's mind blowing to me. Right. So Those 4 are easy for people. I mean, super easy when you talk about where to start.
Yeah. For me, those are my 4 foundational ones too. Like you're talking, and I'm
awesome.
like, oh, that's a little validating. Like, I do know what I'm doing.
Yeah. Great.
Because those are my 4 non-negotiables. They're the same ones. And yeah, quality definitely matters.
Yes.
And fermented foods, one thing people don't know about them is they have limited strains. So if you have one favorite, you're going to overdo it. Right.
That's right.
So
that's right.
And it's just part of the learning process. I think you learn something's good for you. And so you do that because it's better than what you were doing. Right. It's not like, I feel like there's just this progression, you get frustrated with the doctor. You want to take it in your own hands. You learn from a resource and you start incorporating one thing at a time. And then eventually you're like, okay, I'm spending like $500 a month on supplements. What are the most important? And these 4 come back. And it's like, it's just over and over again. This is what people come back to every single time. So starting there, we're going to save you years off of your health journey, because those are the 4 foundations that I too have found. And I also recommend for my clients, like, I typically let the doctors doctor, but if somebody comes to me without one, those are like the 4. I'm like, we got to do that. We got to get your digestion. We got to get your gut healed. We got to address your nutritional deficiencies, and everybody's deficient in magnesium. You're going to feel so much better, and they do. And then of course I do the nutrition side of it. Let's learn how to eat. Let's learn what healthy eating looks like, so that these 4 are enough and we don't have to go more aggressive. I do take one extra one because of my asthma. I take NAC, and it has like selenium in it.
Yeah.
So I do that to help control my asthma. As I've gotten older and I've made changes, it has gotten better. I actually I might use a Preventol I don't know, once a year, if that. Like,
Right.
if I get
Right.
if if I'm out in the cold for a long period of time, my lungs get kind of heavy, so I take a Preventil to make myself feel better. But I went from needing a Preventil every day to like not needing it almost
That's
ever,
great.
right?
That's great.
And that's my additional one. And that's where things come in, bioindividuality, certain, biochemical weaknesses or diseases. But if you get those four, the foundation is there.
Yep. No, that's awesome that you've been able to go from using an albuterol or Provenal
Hmm.
to once a year or whatever, if
Or
that.
less. Yeah.
So, and again, that's the kind of thing. I mean, one of the things with this autoimmune is first, if we can get their gut better, we can start to help them understand what's going on with their autoimmunity. And the really sad part to me is that the standard medical community looks at it as if one if the immune system is working too much, right? That's the way they say, well, your immune system's overactive. Well, really, if you look at the research, that's not true. There's three parts to the immune system, and I tell everybody, just think of a seesaw. If you put a heavy person on one end and a light person on the other end, you're always going to have the light person up in the air and the heavy person on the ground. So that's the Th1 and Th2 parts of our immune system. But in the middle is the teeter totter, right? And
Right.
that's the regulatory part of our immune system. So what happens in autoimmunity is actually not that the immune system is overactive. It's actually that the regulatory part is underactive. And so there's an imbalance. There's a heavy kid on one end and a light kid on the other end. And the teeter totter, the regulation part, is not working properly. And that always starts in the gut. It always starts in the gut.
Yeah.
We got to get both kids to weigh the same. And the way we do that is we fix the teeter totter part. And so when we fix the regulatory part and we start with the gut, we start to see these people's autoimmune problems just again improve. I mean, I've literally got people with MS who were in wheelchairs, who went to walkers, who now walk without anything. People with ankylosing spondylitis that were told they could never work again, they could never work out, they could never have kids, they had to use their Humira, who now have two children and haven't used drugs in 10, 12, 15 years now. So it can be done. It does require effort. It does require an investment in their health, but it's not overly complicated when people are willing to come and educate themselves, and make the changes that you teach people and that I teach people, and that are not really that hard to do. It's just hard to know what to do to get the direction.
That's what I say too. We know food matters. We
Yeah,
know we need to manage stress. We know we need to do these things. I feel like the pharmaceutical side or the medicinal side is probably the least known in everything, but it's like knowing what to do and where
yes,
to go and
yes,
what to look for in supplements and what to look for in food and like all those things, like that's the part that gets complicated and that's the part that gets overwhelming and confusing. And change is hard. It takes a
yep,
lot of mental effort in
yep,
the beginning. It's not forever, but it just takes a lot of, I would say it doesn't even take more time for the most part. It's usually just more mental effort, which feels like more time. And people are so stretched then that they don't even have the mental energy to do that. And so outsourcing that and trusting people who've walked the walk before you and have the knowledge to make your life easier. Like, hey, these supplements, here's what's toxic. Here's why it's not working. Here's what to look for. Here's a great resource. And, all of that just makes, like, it took me 7 years to figure this out,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And to be able to shorten that to a few months, typically I would say give yourself a year. Food typically is about 3 months before it's like your norm. And then you can kind of keep digging deeper, right?
right, right,
And, does the order matter? I feel like, you typically sometimes supplements help because it gives you the energy you need to be able to do the other pieces.
yeah,
that's like my brain. Like I'm just kind of thinking it through from like a health coach perspective of,
Right.
how I would approach people and talk to people about this. But yeah, so and it's always like, where do you start? And I'm always like, get to the place where you have energy. What do you have the energy for? What do you feel is the biggest need? And I feel like addressing nutrient deficiencies makes everything easier because it improves your
Absolutely.
sleep. So you're already more energized. It improves the metabolic functions in your cells, like,
Yeah.
your mitochondrial functions and all of that. The synapses are working better, and it's like, it feels like it is complicated because there's just so much. But when you realize, oh, if I get the nutrients I need and then I start eating the food that's not going to battle with that and not deplete me further, then all this other stuff gets easier, right?
Yeah, and so many people think that they're getting good nutrients. And you
Right.
said that. What do they look for? Well, I'm going to tell you what I think they should look for. Number one, they should know the person and the company who create the products. Because I literally can put M&Ms in a bottle and label it magnesium multivitamin, probiotic, digestive enzyme, because nobody's looking over my shoulder unless you do what we do, and we pay outside organizations to monitor everything that we do. So the first thing they should look for in a quality supplement is NSF certification. Very, very hard to find. Very few companies do it because it's expensive.
Well, that, and they're usually not available over the counter. They're usually only available through naturopathic doctors, naturopathic
Professionals,
stores,
right?
professionals, right?
Pharmacists,
So,
right? That's
so,
right.
and that's an extra expense because now they have to pay for the doctor and the visits, which usually, I mean, we're looking at an upfront investment for the first two, appointments plus testing,
Yeah, I would
$1,000-$1,500,
tell you they
right?
don't have to do that though.
But that's what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah,
I'm thinking about that, and all
yeah,
of a sudden, like, there's this other resource,
right.
that they can go to, that they don't have to go through that to be able to get quality sources, because the
Correct. That's
NSF is usually not available over the counter in
no,
any.
you're right. You're
Yeah.
right. It's usually not. They're not going to find NSF. They're not going to find pharmaceutical grade, and they're not going to find. They might find current good manufacturing practices, but if it's not NSF and pharmaceutical grade, it doesn't mean as much when you put them all together. But yeah, there are resources to get them. They're just few and far between. You're right. But so many people are frustrated because they've taken supplements and seen no results. I can promise you, over 31 years now, 32 years, I can count literally on one hand the number of people who've come back to me and go, you know what? I didn't get anything out of that. I mean, it just doesn't happen when you give the body the real nutrients that it needs in the real forms, in the real amounts, without the junk. I see so many people that will bring me in these supplements, and I hate it because they've gone, well, my friend sells this brand and my buddy sells this and it's great. And I ordered this off, the internet, and it was buy three, get three free. And I tell everybody, that's great, but you need to throw these in the trash, because I point out to them why I tell them that. I'm like, this is doing more harm than good. And when they realize that, it's like a light bulb come on, right? And they go, "Oh wow, I didn't know." My friend at church said this was good, or what? And I know they mean well, but they're not experts. They don't know they really don't know. They're just going off something that somebody else told them, right? You and I are researchers. I'm formulating my own product, so I tell everybody I'm not going to formulate something that I and my family are not willing to take. And it's going to be that quality of standard. And people know when I put something in or on my body, I know the quality or lack thereof of it. So it's really important. And it is a place that people can start, and they can try these foundational four, or they can just try a couple of them to begin with, and they will feel it. And they will always come back to me and go, okay, what's next? What do I do next? Right? What is this OptiYou program you have? What is this CEO subscription you have? What is this medical device you have that has water? They start to want to learn more. And so that's the beauty of it, is when you can. I tell everybody, if I can't help you feel better within the first week, I'm probably either telling you something wrong or you're not doing what I ask. It should not. I have these people, it blows my mind, and I'm sure you have this too, that have been going to the same doctors in the same system for literally decades, and they're worse than they've ever been, ever. I tell the story of Callie, a registered nurse, in my book, and it's mind blowing to me. And so, I told you the first thing I have people write down is be the CEO of your own health. Well, the second thing I have people write down, and it's based off Callie's story of being a registered nurse and being sick her entire life, going through the system, is stop the insanity. Stop doing things that don't work. If a doctor can't help you, or anybody, me, you, whoever it is, can't help you start to turn your health around and feel better in the first week or two, you need to go elsewhere. I'm a very impatient person. I'm not going to stick with something that doesn't work for a month. I'm just not going to do it. But if I can see a tangible difference and feel a tangible difference, then I'll do it, right? And then I'll be more motivated to do the next thing you tell me to do. And that's the approach that I take. I love what you said, just something simple. Okay, simply start the foundational four. Simply, it can be that easy to really get people to start turning their health around, and they will never interfere with any of your meds ever, anybody's meds. Because this is probably a different topic that we can come to in a future podcast, but we're literally treating type 2 diabetics 100% backwards in America.
Yes, we are.
And it's a tragedy, and it's the number one. I think it's the number one problem we have today is insulin resistance, which nobody's checking for, which is why I created my own blood panel in my program. I just, out of necessity, I have to create these things because the medical system is just not going to do it. If there's not a drug for it, they're not going to check it, right? Because they don't know what to do with it. And I have numbers and data on my blood panel that nobody has ever heard of. The patients, because the doctors won't do it. So it's really sad. So I would like for people to understand how much hope there is in the fact that they can feel better. Now, hope's not a strategy, but there is hope if they will follow and implement a real plan, right? They can have I have people that were on, I think the record is 25 prescription meds and 5 insulin shots a day, who are off all of it and healthier and better than they've ever been, and feel better and look better and doing better than they've done in decades. So there is always hope. Even people with severe autoimmunity, like I said, that have been on Humiras and sulfasalazines and prednisones, we have them off all their drugs, and they're doing great. Now, when I say I don't take people off drugs. I'm not a doctor, but they're able to then either wean themselves off, work with their physician or their PA or NP to get off all their drugs over time, of course.
Yeah.
So something we do on really a daily basis. I do wellness consults almost every single day.
I love that. My whole goal is to give people hope and knowledge and empowerment. I was just thinking of, as you were talking about, if people do what we tell them and how quickly they feel better. I can think of the people who don't do what I tell them and the people who do. Yes. And they do with food, it's a little bit slower. I give it about 3 weeks before people start noticing. They'll come to me like, I don't really feel that different, but I am sleeping better. And I notice I'm not needing caffeine all day. And like in the course of our session, they're like telling me, and then, oh yeah, there was this, and then there was this. And I'm like, by the end of it, I'm like, you said you don't feel different, but then you talked about this, and this. And they're like, oh, I guess you're right.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't start with drastic changes. I build people up because I work with people who are really sick, so they need therapeutic diets, right? We have to remove the inflammatory foods, really boost the nutrient intake, but I don't start there. I always lead people up to it so that it's not this dramatic, difficult, mind consuming, all time and energy consuming thing.
Right.
And with little tweaks, people start feeling better within weeks, and
yes, absolutely.
And so I love the message of hope that like you are in control, and it's just figuring out what to do and what resources are available to get you the results that you need. And so I'm so grateful that you came on the podcast and you're sharing this message. And I look forward to having you back and taking everybody on a deeper journey and just kind of because there's just so much to learn, right? Like this is like barely scratching the surface.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that you said there is it doesn't have to be time consuming, or you don't want it to be overwhelming or time consuming. That's what I tell everybody. I don't think it takes any more time to be healthy. I think it takes less time to be healthy than it does to be sick, right? I don't need to run to the doctor's office. I don't need to run to the pharmacy to get my prescription filled. I don't have those duties on me on a daily, those tasks. I can go out and do things that I enjoy. I can go out and, play with the kids or go out for a run or a workout or a hike or whatever, right? Versus, oh, I got a doctor's appointment. I mean, I'm going to confess something to you that I probably shouldn't, but I will. I haven't been to the doctor since junior high. And I'm not encouraging others to do that. But when I can do my own blood work, I can take my supplements, I can take care of myself. Why do I want to get into a broken system, right?
Right.
So my choice is to take care of my own needs, be the CEO of my own health. Now, in an emergency situation, if I had to go, I would go. Absolutely. We have the best emergency care in the world. We have the worst chronic disease care in the world. It's
if I have a broken bone or I'm in an accident, stitch me up and give me all the drugs, and then I'll help my body recover after the fact, And if you're in an autoimmune flare and you need those medicines, you do need to wean off. But let's support the body in the meantime. So we're not saying that pharmaceuticals are bad or modern medicine is bad, but when it comes to chronic disease and chronic illness, you're not stuck with prescriptions and surgery. There's so much you can do to support your health and become asymptomatic. You truly can. Doesn't mean the disease is completely gone. No, but does it mean you have to suffer from symptoms the whole time? Also no. And I think that's the hope that we're trying to impart, is that you don't have to be sick forever, and that you can yourself with your own actions improve your health and your health outcomes.
Absolutely. I mean, I have seen some of the most dramatic turnarounds, and I'm sure you have too, that people just, they had lost all hope. And then they were like, I'm starting to feel better, right? And then they're like, I'm starting to really feel better. And it's like, I tell people, it's like a snowball going down the hill. You can either be going down the hill in the wrong direction, or you can be going down the hill in the right direction. And so what I'm trying to do is push your snowball down the right side of the hill, right? And we can do that. And I believe that if we understand how the body works, and we understand the way that God designed the body to work, and so instead of blocking a receptor or blocking an enzyme or killing an enzyme with a drug, let's just try to improve what's wrong, right? And we don't get side effects that way. We only get positive effects. And so there's always hope, always, always, always hope under any circumstance, I believe.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for joining me. Let's tell people how to get in touch with you. I'll also have it in the show notes, but let's go ahead and say it here in case they're like ready to make a phone call.
Yeah, sure. So there's two really easy ways to get my information. Number one is Billy, BILLYW 360.com. That's kind of an all-encompassing everything, how to get in touch with me, links to my Prescriptions Plus site, to my OptiYou RX site. And then the second easiest way is just the OptiYou RX.com, and that's OptiYou RX.com. That is more the wellness site, where the foundational 4 products are and those kind of things. So yes, Great. Those are both easy ways to find all my contact information.
Great. Well, thank you again, and I look forward to having you back.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, and I really enjoyed it, and I hope that we can do it again.
Definitely. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. If you found this episode helpful, would you do me a favor and help others find it by leaving a review, sharing a screenshot on social media, or sharing the link with a friend? By you sharing what you've learned, others are able to find this podcast and join our community. Be sure to check out my website, www.roadtolivingwhole.com, for over 160 delicious recipes, a variety of meal plans, and a blog packed full of even more healthy living tips. If you'd like to learn more about how to work with me as your coach, you can schedule a free consult through www.roadtolivingwhole.com/health-coaching/. Until next time, friend. Bye.